Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's trade recap for May 19th to the 23rd. So, if you were trading this week, you know that price was pretty choppy, especially on Tuesday. So, I only alerted 5 trades. About 4 of those 5 trades hit. The one that didn't exactly hit did end up working out, and I'll go over that and why I exited it kind of early. But the first trade that was taken was Tesla 345 calls. So, I didn't alert my exact entry for this, but I did give the chat a whole setup for where you should enter, what contracts I would be entering, and all that good stuff. So I alerted this around 7:08 a.m. and I said, watch for Tesla to get a continuation above 340. Ideally, enter at the 349 area. So with choppy price, I was in and out of these pretty quickly. So I did take entry once we kind of held up this area right here. So this 339 30 area, we got a hold above here and took entry on some 345 calls, and I ended up exiting around 342 because this candle is where I started to see us getting some resistance to the upside. I exited these for around 40%. I did take some partials around like 30%, and then runners went to 40%. Let me move this down. And that was about it for Tesla. Again, I didn't alert an exact entry on this. I just alerted, where you should be taking it from. Second trade for that day, again, we're still on May 19th, was QQQ. So this was the one trade that didn't exactly work out. Okay, the next trade that I alerted, don't mind my dog back there. The next trade I alerted was some QQQ 520 calls, 0 dated. So this is actually the play that didn't end up working out, and I exited early. I kind of wish I didn't exit early, but due to pre-market and the downside that we got, due to our credit downgrade last Friday, I wasn't exactly too sure how we were going to continue to hold up, so I did end up cutting these early. They ran to profit after I cut them for negative 10%. But yeah, I entered exactly around 8 a.m. once we started holding up 519.20. So this is where I ended up entering, and then I ended up cutting the position around this 8:15 or 8:20 candle. Because theta was really eating them, we got the super choppy price action, 0 dated Q calls. And I wasn't too sure if we were going to continue to hold this up since we were getting so much chop around my initial resistance level. So if some members did hold these, they did end up running up 50% or so. But again, I cut my losses at negative 10%. I just did not like, the choppy price action we were getting. So the next day, which was Tuesday, I actually did end up calling out a trade, but this was a painful one. It did not really move at all. So back on May 20th. So I did call out some Mara calls on this day. I believe I actually took entry. Let's see. So I called entry out at around 7:25 a.m. So around like this candle, this candle right here, once we started to hold up that 16 area, that was kind of my sign. We were going to continue up. And of course, Mara trades with Bitcoin. So just watching Bitcoin, that day Bitcoin was just continuing and rallying up. But since the rest of the market was super flat, Mara wasn't exactly following Bitcoin too closely. So we did hold these. I had my stop set at negative 20, and these never went past negative 10%. They just kind of sat in one place. And then I ended up taking profits for around 15 to 20%. I ended up selling these contracts, I believe, at like this 16:15 around 10 a.m. and then like 6:25 is when I also took some more. 16:25 is when I also took some more profits. So around like 10 a.m. and 10:20 a.m. is where I got out of these contracts. So Mara was a pretty painful hold. It was like a 2-3 hour long trade, which if you guys know me and watch my trade recaps, I'm usually not in trades that I call out for too long. Usually, more of shorter term setups. Being in that Mara trade was extremely painful because it was just not moving. So that was the next trade called out. Again, not the greatest week, pretty mid-week. Okay, and then Wednesday I did not alert any trades. I wasn't able to be on the charts for too long. I was slightly more busy that day, but then Tuesday is when I partially alerted Meta. So we got some Thursday. So we got some nice price action actually on Thursday in both directions. So I called this one out, but I wasn't able to call out like exactly when I was entering. I just said you know, enter Meta contracts when we hold above 638, when we get a hold above 638, and I'm looking at some 650 calls. So Meta ended up, moving to the upside extremely quickly. So I took my entry around like 638.30. Once we got this like wick down, still holding up our resistance level. So that is exactly why I took entry on Meta. It was around a 20 to 30% gain on these contracts, and I ended up taking profit around this 642 area because, again, the rest of the market wasn't really holding up. It was still more choppy price action, especially if you're watching Qs. And then the next trade I ended up alerting actually was Meta puts. So we tapped back into 638. Let's see, 638.20 for entry. So I ended up calling these 6:30 puts around 8:48 a.m. So around this time right here. Oh, I remember these. I got out of them really quickly. We actually got a kind of nice move down on them. But it was, really, really fast movement. So I ended up entering these around like this 638.50. So at basically the top of this wick, and then I ended up exiting around like the low of like 637 because again, price was super choppy. As you see here, price was choppy. I wanted to be in and out of trades, especially when you're trading something like options. Contracts will absolutely screw you if price is choppy. You do not want to be in these type of contracts. So yeah, it took entry around 250, was up, 20-30%, and that is where I exited when I was up around to 280, 285 a contract. And then for Friday, absolutely zero setups across the board for me. On Fridays, I generally don't like to trade, for too long past 8:30 because it is Friday, especially all those zero dated contracts are, if you were not moving, theta is just going to get to you. So again, we kind of made this like small upside move, which was at market open. Again, I don't trade like as soon as the market opens, and we also were getting news around 7 a.m. So I kind of just waited to see if we would see a setup, and we did not. We just, chopped around. We got some upside towards the end of the day, and that was it. There was absolutely zero trades called out for me. So that is the trade recap for this past week. If you had a rough time with the choppy price action, I totally get it, especially when you're trading options. Options contracts do not do well with choppy price action. They will get terrible movements. So it is best to kind of step back a little bit when we see this type of chop and price action. If you're well versed in futures, I would recommend, when we're getting choppy price action, to be watching NQES. Maybe if you see a setup on there, you should take your setup. But with options, if we're just going to chop and only make, $2 moves at most, you do not want to be in those contracts because they will barely move and they will just get burned. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you want to join my community, make sure to join in bio. But I will see you all later. And yeah.